Aloha, hockey fans, and welcome to the BlueNote Fan Report. I am Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, and I am your host on the only program out there that is by a fan, for the fans, and most definitely about you, the fan. Yeah, that's right. And if you've ever wondered what I meant, you gotta stick around for today's fan of the game. This couple is what About the Fan is all about. Can't wait to talk to them. Well, before we get there, let's talk about some of the news of the day. A couple interesting things have happened in the past week. One of the first ones was former coach, assistant coach
Mark
Jimmy
Savard
Roberts has decided to step away from hockey and left the Blues. Well, what happened was the Blues reached out to Jim Montgomery. Now, Jim played 1 year with the Blues, played in the NHL for a while, and then went on to become an assistant coach and a coach. While he was at the University of Denver as a coach, he won an NCAA championship. Just recently, he was the coach of the Dallas Stars during the second round, where Pat Maroon lifted the city on his shoulders and put the team into the Western Conference Finals. The Blues have hired him as an assistant head coach. On the just the normal outlook, it's not a big deal. However, you must remember that Jim was fired from the Dallas Stars back in December for conduct unbecoming, or unprofessional conduct, as they said. He had a bout with alcoholism. He decided to check himself into an inpatient resident program, and he has been, according to him, for the last 9 months sober. On stlouisblues.com, Chris Kerber does an interview with him. It is one of the best interviews I've ever seen. Please go check it out. I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to plagiarize it and show any of it, but go to stlouisblues.com and see that interview. Now, one of the things about Jim, and one of the things that I hope, is the guys from St. Louis, or Let's Go Blues Radio, went out and put this chart that showed Dallas's high-scoring chances when Montgomery was the coach and what they were after he was the coach. It's a pretty interesting thing. Now, the St. Louis Blues power play was third overall prior to the break. But during the round robin in the playoffs, the power play was seemingly lacking. Something else that was lacking was neutral zone play. Dallas had some speed and used it through the neutral zone. I'm really hoping that Jim is going to take some of that and bring it to the Blues. Jim has stated in his interview that he's going to do whatever Chief wants him to do, and he's more than glad to help out. His wife is from St. Louis, and he has lived in St. Louis for over 20 years. This is it's an interesting hire, to say the least. Then, Blues assistant GM and director of scouting, Bill Armstrong, was hired as the general manager of the Coyotes. Now, this is kind of interesting. He is young. When Chakra was hired, he was the youngest GM in the league. Now, if you remember, just before the playoffs, on July 26th, Chakra quit. Just quit. Walked away. Armstrong is going to have a daunting task ahead of him. He has no first-round pick. He has no third-round pick. He has to sign Taylor Hall with a very tight wad of an owner. It is going to make his job very difficult, but this is a team that has a lot of potential to be a playoff contender very soon. I wish Bill Armstrong all the luck in the world. I think that he's going to be able to move forward. Now, with the playoffs, the Dallas Stars have moved into the Stanley Cup Finals. They're the new Western Conference champions. I got to congratulate them. My buddy Mike Dante had said it was the Blues that were holding them up. He might be right. In the East, as I'm filming this, Tampa Bay and the New York Islanders are playing. If Tampa wins, they move on. Now, why is that important? Well, in the bracket challenge, if Tampa wins, we have a winner, and someone will get get the Shattenkirk jersey, and then we have our pick'em contest. Well, our pick'em contest kind of fell off, but I want everyone to know you still have a chance. For the Stanley Cup Finals, we're going to double the points. You heard me, double the points. You're going to have a chance to catch up. Pay attention to the finals, get in there and make your picks, and if we don't put a post, let us know. Tag the admin guys so we can remember to do it. Help us out. I really look forward to it. Now, talk about my guest. My guest today played 3 years with the St. Louis Blues for 151 games, scored 23 goals, 42 assists for 65 points. Spent years with the Blues as an analysis and working for the team. All around good guy. I want everyone to give a really big BlueNote Fan Report. Welcome to my special guest, Mr. Terry Yake. Well, Hawaii Blues fan clan and the BlueNote Fan Report fans, I want you to give a great big welcome to former Blue and Blues commentator, Mr. Terry Yake. Terry, welcome to the BlueNote Fan Report.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's taken a little bit of time, but I'm glad we're finally able to work this out. Why don't you tell us, Terry, where you're from and how you got into hockey?
Well, we want to go way back. I got into hockey at the age of 2 years old. My dad was a big hockey fan. He was playing senior hockey out in British Columbia, where I was born. I lived out there till I was about 6. I moved to Manitoba, and then hockey became a real part of the daily routine. Winters were a lot colder. There was a lot more ice available. We lived in a small town of only 80 people, and they had ice available all year round. Well, that's not true. We had 9 months of hockey and 3 months of bad skating, but there was a lot of ice. And so I grew up playing my minor hockey there, and was fortunate enough to be selected by the Brandon Wheat Kings, which was the closest WHL team to be on their list. And I made the team at 17 years old. Went there and played. My parents, my sisters, my grandparents got to come in and watch every single game. And from there, I was able to get drafted by the Hartford Whalers and go on to a 22-year professional career.
Wow. Well, the Whalers back then, this would have been, I want to say, you were drafted in 87, if I remember
87, right? Yes.
Yep. So you and me are the same age. That would have been our senior year in high school.
That's right. Exactly. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Damn, we're old.
Hey, let's not go there yet.
Yeah, there's a few people. So 87, the Whalers were, I'm guessing they were kind of a bottom feeding team, if I remember right at that time. They really weren't having a lot of great success. What was it like going to them? What was it like going to the Whalers or did you go straight to the minors?
I went pretty much straight to the minors. I mean, obviously your first you go to training camp, which was a great experience. You play with and against some of the best players in the game. And Ron Francis was there, of course, Mike Liute, Ulf Samuelsson, some really good hockey players. And when you go through a training camp and you're only 18 years old, at the time I was 18 still because I didn't turn 19 till later in the season, I learned an awful lot. And then I went back and played junior that year. So after my first training camp, I went back and finished my 19-year-old year of junior. Then I went with an opportunity to hopefully make the hockey club. I wasn't able to do that. I went and spent a couple years in the American Hockey League before playing a few games each season before I finally got a chance in the 1991 season to play near the end of the season. I was up and down a little bit, and then I believe I played the last 15 games of the season and the playoffs with the Hartford Whalers. So it was kind of my first breakout opportunity. Then I found myself up and down again for the next year. And then that following year, I was actually in the American Hockey League. My 5th year pro, I started off in the American Hockey League. Looked like Hartford had given up on me. And a funny story, I got called from Brian Burke and said, we were calling you up because John Cullen just got injured. or actually he got suspended for one game. So I was coming up with the intention I was only playing one game because that's basically what he said. So, okay, I drove down from Springfield to Hartford, had my suit, got in the game. Well, the first shift of the game, I got on the ice, I went straight to the net and shot from the point. Puck went off the goalie's pad right to me, and I had half an empty net, and I managed to score. And then later in the game, they had me out killing a penalty. I blocked a shot, made a nice little sauce pass to Mark Jansen, who went in on a breakaway, shorthanded, and scored. Lo and behold, I have a goal and assist in my first game. And then they tell me they want me to go to they want me to go on the road trip, where the next game I'm going up to Ottawa. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have any clothes. I don't even have a toothbrush. So I get straight off. I go straight out. I go right on the bus, right to the airport, and we're flying off to Ottawa. Me with no clothes, no overcoat, no nothing. And we go to Ottawa, and I end up getting an assist early in the game. And then with a minute and a half left, I go down and make a real nice move and score the game winner. So I've got 4 points in 2 games, and I didn't see the American Hockey League for a couple of years. So that was kind of how I got broke in after being called up and sent down probably 15 times over my first 4 seasons with the Whalers. It comes, and I get to stay on the first time they ever tell me, you're going back after the game. So it was supposed to be a 1-game stint, and I ended up staying. So it was it's kind of ironic how maybe I was more relaxed than ever, and I was able to go out and play the game that I was meant to play.
Yeah, that's a great story, man. That's I mean, so I've talked to a couple different guys about this. What's it like, or what's your thought process when you're in that beginning couple of years and you're going up and down like that through the AHL to the NHL? Kind of, there's no continuity. So how do you deal with that, or how did you deal with that?
So there's a couple different pieces to the puzzle. And first off, you want to play your first game. So you get your first game, you're really excited. And for me, I was excited, I was thrilled, but I wasn't ready. I was way too nervous. I was in too much awe of the players that were up there, and I wasn't ready to go play my game yet at the NHL level. And that's just a mindset. That's just me growing up from the time I was a kid, wanting to play in the NHL, the opportunities in front of me, and I wasn't mentally prepared to be the player that I needed to be to stay. So you do that a bunch of times, and then after a while, you start getting frustrated because you get called up, you get sent down. You get called up, you get sent down, and you get frustrated saying, what do I need to do to finally stay and actually make it? Then you start overanalyzing a little bit. You maybe wonder if you're on the right track, but then you finally get that opportunity like I got, and you're successful. Now you just want to stay because you get the taste of the NHL. You realize that I can play here. And once that realization comes, I think you're a better player for it. And unfortunately for me, like some guys, it took a long time. It took a while for me to get to appreciate what it took to play at that level, at a higher level, and not be in awe of the guys that were on the ice.
Yeah, I kind of get a feeling for that, like doing this. I'm in awe of a lot of the guys that I'm talking to, yet I'm not supposed to be. So I understand where you're coming from there. Then you happen to have another interesting thing happen in your hockey career. An expansion team decided to pick you. What was that like?
So the season when I got called up and I had 4 points in the first 2 games, and it actually just stayed up the entire season, I ended up with 53 points in 66 games, had a good run, and ended up, I think, 4th or 5th in the team in scoring. But Brian Burke and the Hartford Whalers decided that they were not going to protect me, and I was going to be available for the Florida Panthers and the Anaheim Ducks. So I was actually, I believe, the leading scorer of all the players that were available for the draft for Florida and for Anaheim. So both teams had an opportunity to go back and forth, the regular draft, and pick the players that they wanted. They started with the goalies, then they went to the defensemen, and then they went through the forwards. I was blessed to get picked by Anaheim. I wouldn't be disappointed if I went either place. I was actually, by the time the draft came around, I was disappointed that Hartford didn't want me as part of their organization. But I was also excited to go to something new. I figured it would be an opportunity to get more ice time. And was it ever? I mean, hockey in Anaheim was very new. There was very little known about the game. They were still teaching people here in Anaheim what icings and offsides were, but there was no lack of enthusiasm and excitement here in Anaheim. And the crowds were great. The fans were unbelievable. We sold out almost every single game of the year. And it was one of the more fun seasons I had, because you put a whole group of players together that were rejected or were not wanted, basically not protected would be the politically correct term, but we weren't wanted by our own teams. And we got to go together and do something that was very good. And we won 33 games that first season, which was, I believe, a record at the time for an expansion team.
Yeah, that was, I remember, that would have been, I want to say 92, I think?
93, 94.
93, 94, that's right. Because 91, 92 is when the Sharks came in. They came in, the
Correct. Ducks
came in a year after. I got to remember when the Mighty Duck movie came out. That's got to be kind of an interesting, too, that you're playing on a team that was basically named after a movie.
Yeah, and of course you had Disney running the organization. They owned the club, so they brought their Disney flair to the organization. They were unbelievable. Our opening ceremonies for the first game was something to behold. It was an hour long with Wild Wing coming out of the stands and ice dancers and cheerleaders and all the other things that go along with a Disney production, great music and sound effects and lighting and everything else. So I think it set a new standard in the National Hockey League for the entertainment value, that this wasn't just a hockey game now, this was an entertainment venue. Some people maybe sneered at it a little bit to begin with, but in the end, every team in the NHL is doing that exact thing right now. In fact, they've continued to add to it because this is entertainment. These guys out here, and although we're out there to play and win, it's entertainment. That's what sells tickets. That's what people want to do. They want to go and watch a great hockey game, but they also want to be entertained. And sometimes the time in between shifts, the time in between periods is a great opportunity to provide entertainment. And Disney started all that in '93 with that first team here in Anaheim.
Yeah, and I gotta admit, when it first came out, I didn't get to see all of it, but when I got to go back to a game, I think the first game I had seen after that had come out would have been in '97. I saw the last game at Chicago Stadium. I was so desperate to see a game of hockey that I went and seen a Blackhawks game.
That's almost traitorous.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so they had started bringing that into it, and I actually like it. I really do. I think it does. I think it connects the game to the fans a little bit more. That when you're going there, that it's now, you're not just watching a sporting. It's almost like, and I talked to Mike Liut about this a little bit, like in Toronto in the early days where you wore a suit to the game.
Right. And a top hat.
Yeah, it was an event. It was something special. And I think in Disney's entertainment value, they brought that back to the game somewhat.
They sure did. And in fact, well after this had begun in the South or in Anaheim and other organizations in the National Hockey League, Canada was still known through the late 90s, a lot of the Canadian teams, as being very, very quiet and very stuffy. You would go there and the fans would clap for a good play or cheer. And now the Canadian fans have probably even turned the tides, and they're the most rabid of all of them throughout the National Hockey League, where they go crazy. This is an opportunity for people and fans to go have a beer and let loose, cheer your team on, go crazy, yell and scream, enjoy the entertainment, and love the game. And I think a lot of that started with the entertainment value that the Ducks brought in '93.
Now, you're the answer to a trivia question for the Ducks. Do you know what that question is?
Well, there's a couple of them. First ever hat trick would be one of them.
That's the one. That's the one I was thinking of.
First ever player to lead team in scoring, which is a pretty simple one.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say there are probably a couple other ones. I mean, the first ever goal was scored by Sean Hill, but I assisted on that as well, and it was a lot of firsts that year, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of.
Yeah. When you're playing for an expansion team like that, now this is before the Vegas, but you're kind of not expected to make the playoffs or really have a good season. How do you go, and I know that you guys are all professionals, that you all go in there every night wanting to play your best, but knowing that your best may not be good enough. How does that affect your mindset, or does it change the way you play, or
I think you're concerned when the season started. We were definitely concerned, were we going to be competitive? And the first night we lost 7-2 to the Detroit Red Wings, and it was a little eye-opener. But you're talking about Sergei Fedorov and Steve Yzerman and, the likes of that. It was an awful good hockey team. And that was an eye-opener. But our first 5 games were all at home, and we came out of them, I believe, 2-3, and then went into New York for our first road game, and that's when I managed to get my first and only ever hat trick in the National Hockey League. And we won that game 4-2. Now, that was a team that was expected to be pretty good. And, of course, they turned out pretty good because they ended up winning the Stanley Cup that year. Games, as you go along, you get a little bit of belief, and our team finally started to believe that we could win and we could be competitive. And by winning 33 games, believe it or not, we missed out on the playoffs. The San Jose Sharks beat us by 6 points, and we played them 6 times. And unfortunately, we did not beat them 1 time. So if we would have just won 2 out of 6 from the Sharks, it would have been enough points for us to get in, and they would have been out. That's how close it was for that Ducks team to make the playoffs. Now, that, of course, would have been smashed by the Vegas Golden Knights here 3 years ago when they entered the National Hockey League. But it would have been quite a feather in our cap. And we were right in the playoff run with still a week to go in the season, which was a real exciting for us. And we started believing, I think, pretty early about game 5 or 6 when we were 3-3 after 5 or 6 games, and people started to see that, maybe this team can win some hockey games this year and stay competitive.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of teams that lost 7-2 to those Red Wings, and
yes, there
those are
was.
some good teams. I mean, really
Yes.
good teams that lost 7-2 to those Red Wings. So that's nothing to be despondent about.
Well, we did go on a Canadian road trip at one point in either December or January, it might have been, where we went to Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and Winnipeg, and we swept all 4 games. And it was quite a feather in our cap as well, because those were not 4 teams that were slouches by any stretch of the imagination either. You're talking only a few years after the Oilers had won the Cup. You're talking about a Winnipeg team that had Solani, Tkachuk, Zamnoff, and the likes in their team. So it was a pretty good road trip for our club to go up there and take 4 games on the road over the course of a week.
So you play? How long did you play for the Ducks?
Just the 1 season. And I got traded the next year to Toronto.
And I think with Toronto, you went up and down a little bit, if I remember correctly, or?
Well, it was basically, I was up for most of the season, but it was a contract dispute. That's basically what got me traded out of Anaheim. I think my agent made some very critical errors at the time and put me in a very tough situation. The Ducks had traded me to Toronto for David Sackle. I went there, and basically I was not playing. There was some really legit hockey players that were significantly better than myself. Dave Andrechuk, Mike Gartner, Doug Gilmore, Matt Sundin, Randy Wood, Ridley. So there was a top 6 or 7. And then their third line was a destined checking line. So that was not a spot that they were looking to play me. So unless somebody was hurt or not playing well, I was either out of the lineup or I was stuck on the 4th line. So it was not a good fit for me. Late in the season, they decided, because the contract hadn't been settled yet, that it was either go down to the American Hockey League and go to St. John's, Newfoundland, or we're going to send you to Denver to a team where Butch Goring was coaching and an opportunity to win a Turner Cup. So I chose to go to Denver and ended up going there and winning a Turner Cup with Butch. Playoffs were just about to start in the International League. That was the year of the lockout, so everything was pushed back a little bit. So the NHL still had a few games left in the International League was pretty much done their regular season. And we marched through the IHL playoffs, and I managed to win a Turner Cup, which was a great experience for the Denver Grizzlies in '95.
You came to St. Louis in, I want to say
97.
Yeah.
Yes.
Trying to get all my dates here and correct. Sometimes it's hard. In '97, you came and you got to play with Pavel Demitra. You had 3 really good years with St. Probably Can you tell us a little bit about your time playing in St. Louis and what it was like to put on that Blue Note?
Well, it was probably the most enjoyable stint in my career. Now, trying to compare the two between Hartford or the 3 Anaheim and St. Louis is difficult, but Hartford was where I got my start. I had a good season there the last year, but then I was left unprotected, which obviously leaves a sour taste. You come to Anaheim, everything's fun, exciting. I have a great year. I lead the team in scoring. But unfortunately, I only got to play in Anaheim for one season. Then a few years later, I find myself in St. Louis. Now, again, I go back to the same analogy as Toronto. I wasn't the best player on the team, and I probably wasn't in the top 6 on that team because that was a top National Hockey League team. We were in the top 4 3 years that I was there. And in fact, the last season I was there, the St. Louis Blues in 99-2000 won the President's Trophy for the most points in the National Hockey League. Pronger and McInnes on the point. You got Grant Fuhr and net, but you got the likes of Brett Hull the first year, and Turgeon and Courtnall and Scott Young and Handzus. And you have a lot of quality players, which made us a really good team. So what really makes that fun is, although you don't play as much, you go into every single game expecting to win and actually winning most of them. So if you win, if you lose, it's actually a real disappointed, and you expect to win every single night. So that's a lot of fun when you're at the NHL level and you feel like you're better than the team around you. And your job is to do what you do and what you do best and help the team be part of a winning victory. So maybe I wasn't getting 14, 15, 16 minutes of ice time a game, and maybe it was only 10, 12, 14, but it was still in a winning effort, and that was a lot of fun on a night-to-night basis. And then, of course, the ultimate prize, the Stanley Cup, you're going into the playoffs with a chance to win that as well. And unfortunately, all 3 years, those clubs lost out to the team that eventually won the Stanley Cup. We were in some tough competition. Colorado Avalanche, the Detroit Red Wings, of course, and then the next year's the 99 season, the Dallas Stars. So there were some tough battles there to get through those teams that won the Stanley Cup, the Western Conference, and in particular that Central Division was really strong at that time. So unfortunately, the Blues were not able to do that, and we're really disappointed I didn't get an opportunity to play a little bit longer through the playoffs. But those years in St. Louis were great because of the competitiveness of that team.
Yeah, those were the teams that when you look at the names on the team, you're going, how did they not win a cup? You don't realize that as great as they were, there were 4 or 5 really, really good teams throughout the league at that period. And, any of them could have won a cup.
Yeah, remember, this was all before salary cap. So the world was changing, and it was changing rapidly. So when you think of 92, 93, the salaries we just had salary disclosure at 91. The salaries were slowly starting to climb. But by the time you get to the mid to late 90s, salary cap had become a huge issue. So you've got teams who could afford and were starting to pay. You got the Detroit Red Wings were stocking up with whoever would go there. They could pay them all kinds of money. Colorado, of course, was very deep with getting Patrick Waugh, having Sakic and Forsberg. The Dallas Stars lured Brett Hull away, and with Mike Modano and Neuendijk, and taking Brett Hull with, of course, Belfour and Zubov and the group on defense, they were very tough as well. So the haves and the haves not were starting to separate themselves in the mid to late 90s, of course, leading to 04-05 when you had a lockout that brought in salary cap. But I think it would have just gotten worse had you not had a salary cap. And as much as none of us wanted a salary cap, we were all against it. It's been good for parity in the National Hockey League because we, the St. Louis Blues, and a few of those teams were really starting to separate ourselves from the rest of the National Hockey League because they were able to keep and pay for players. And it was all about who had the money. And eventually some team was going to realize that if they just waited long enough, they could sign all the best players in the National Hockey League and basically have an all-star team as long as they were willing to spend that kind of money. And that wouldn't have been good for hockey anywhere.
No, it wouldn't. And as great as those Detroit Red Wing teams were, I mean, it was kind of, it felt unfair almost, the Russian line. They've got the 5 best players in the world on one line, and you're going, huh? How did that happen?
And they were able to sign Larionov. They were able to sign, like you said, Shanahan. And later in the early 2000s, they got Brett Hull, the Luc Robitaille. I mean, these things don't happen. And those guys are not going to Carolina or Florida for a reason, and it's financial. So, yes, the game would have gotten really out of whack, I think, had something not been done.
Right. So now you got to play with Pavel a little bit, and I remember something about Pavel. I think this might have been when you were with him still. He had come up for his first salary arbitration, and he had talked about afterwards how he went into arbitration thinking how good it was going to be, how good he had been, and then the Blues had said, well, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. In the playoffs, he kind of fell off, and he said that really shocked and surprised him, but it motivated him at the same time too. Was that the type of player he was, that when he really got motivated like that? Or
Well, if you knew his past history, it was almost it was a difficult situation for him to even get out of Slovakia. I mean, this guy overcame the odds and was really not really looked upon as a good player by Ottawa. Wasn't really given a great opportunity. He got an opportunity to come to St. Louis, and he found his niche. He found a coach in Joel Quenneville that was going to let him do what he did and allowed him to play. And this guy was a great worker. He had all kinds of skill, and finally he found someone that actually believed in him, and he took it and ran with it. So, the contract negotiation, something between the player and his agent and the general manager, that's something that's really difficult to quantify. What is a guy worth? And at that time, nobody really knew. The salaries were going up so quickly, and everybody figured that they had somebody in the league that they compared to. Well, GMs were doing their best to try and keep those numbers down and as low as possible. So they were trying to find somebody that they thought you compared to, and they were making up excuses, whether it be true or not, about why you weren't worthy of that kind of money.
yeah, I mean, you get it. You get in a negotiation. Everyone finds. I'm sorry. I thought you froze there for a second.
No.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to walk over you.
So Pavel fell into that category of, it's like, well, we can't pay everybody, so we're going to try and keep some players down. And at one point I was in that category, but at the end of the day, he was still a very valuable part of the St. Louis Blues and had an unbelievable run there with 90-point seasons, leading the team in scoring multiple times.
Yeah. He had a real good vision on the ice, it looked like, for me. When I got to see him on TV, it seemed like he saw the ice differently than everybody else did, because he always seemed to find that little bitty hole that didn't look like it was there, but he could get there and get some open ice.
Well, you might not say he was fast, but he was never slow enough that you would ever catch him on a breakaway. If you got a breakaway, you weren't catching him. When he got around the net, he had a real nose for the net. He was unbelievable in practice and in games on breakaways and a penalty shot. He had multiple moves that he could use, so he had real slick hands. But you don't get 60 to 90 points a season without being a competitor, and he was a fierce competitor. I remember his bald head would be shaved, and he'd come off the ice sometimes in between periods, and if he had missed an opportunity, he'd be scratching his head and be swearing in Slovakian, just getting himself fired up and walking around the room slapping himself. And then he would go out and take it out on the other team with the puck, not going out there running somebody, but he would do a job on the ice and he would just refocus himself. So yeah, real good, a great man. I drove with him almost every single game in his brand new black Corvette. He would pick me up before the game, and we'd drive from Chesterfield down to the Sava Center at the time, or the Kiel Center, and we would go in, and that's a way that he could get to the hockey game. So I'd ride in his Corvette, and we didn't say too much. We would just ride together, and he'd have his favorite music on, and we'd get to the game and walk in, and he'd get ready for business. So it was business from the time the car pulled up all the way to the rink, and that's how I got to know him real well. And him and his love for the macaroni grill was legendary. I think they ate there every single day, he and the other Slovakians, Hanzus, Nagy, and Bartechko.
Yeah, there was I think about those teams and just it always seemed like you guys were having fun on the ice, right?
When you win, you can have a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say, I think Tyson Nash was there when you were there. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I met him at a signing once. I was home and got to see the game. This was the year after they got bounced out in the first round that they won the President's Trophy. So that would have been 99, 2000, I think. And
Yes.
so I'm talking to him at the signing table, and and I'm telling him about me being in the Navy at the time, and I was home on leave and that. He looks at me and goes, "Real sorry about playoffs last year, dude."
Yeah, I think everybody we were sorry about the playoffs every single year that we lost out, unfortunately, because the expectations were high and the dreams of the St. Louis fans were big. They wanted the cup. It had been a long time, and unfortunately for them, they had to wait another 20 years. But how sweet it was when it finally did come last year.
Well, that's a good point you bring up. So I've talked to a few players, and most of them feel like this cup, is their cup too. Do you kind of feel that way a little bit, or?
Yes, a little bit. I mean, obviously, I was working for the organization for 7 years, so I think that had a little bit to do with it. But one of the things that separates St. Louis from a lot of other places in the National Hockey League, a lot of guys retire to St. Louis, a lot of guys stay there. There's over 50 alumni living there, and they include us in everything. We have a great alumni association that's very inclusive, and the current players have been nothing short of amazing with us. They come to our fantasy camp. For years, they would come and actually lace up the skates. They would come and sit and talk at banquets with our fantasy campers. They would be part of the organization. We do events together. We do signings together at the big rink. We go to charity events together. The alumni are invited to their golf tournament every year. So there's a great cohesion between the current players and the alumni. So you get to know them personally. When you get to know them personally, you actually realize that every single one of them is a great guy, and you're cheering for them. You want them to be successful. And when they win, you feel like you're winning. There's nobody else you'd rather have winning than the Blues, especially when you live in the city and you know the players, you wore the Blue Note, and you're part of the organization. So yes, it does feel like our cup. As much as we would have liked to win it in the 90s, there's a little bit of satisfaction for us and a little bit of that hole filled with that cup victory last year in 2019.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, I guess yesterday Dallas made it back to the playoffs for the first time since 2000 when they had Brett Hull, and, they won it in 99. I'm wondering if they win it this year, is he going to celebrate their win as much as he celebrated ours?
No, I don't think so. Brett was a long-time Blue and a short-time Star. Although he got his first cup with Dallas, I think his heart was in St. Louis.
So I'm just wondering, do you have any Brett Hull stories that you can tell us?
Probably not that I should say live, no. Outside of the fact that he was one of the greatest shooters I've ever seen. And when I came to the Blues at the age of 27, you'd think you'd understand the game and know a lot. I learned more about shooting in that 1 year playing with Brett Hull than I had in my entire previous career. How the one-timer works, the dynamics of the hockey stick even, and how important it is to have the proper flex and a little bit more curve on your stick to take a benefit of your shot. I mean, I probably shortened my stick. I changed more, all because of the Brett Hull influence. I learned to take the one-timer, go down on the one knee, all those different things. And you learn that 6-7 years into your professional career, not just your hockey career, your professional career, because he was truly one of the best. And the best part of it is I don't know that he even could explain what he was doing. It was so easy for him. He just did it naturally. When he did it, he just said, well, just do this. Just do this. Like, well, you got to break it down for me. But, I was able to watch him close enough that I was able to figure out some of the things that he was doing, and able to figure out how to replicate it and become a better player through the next 10 years of my career.
So were you there during the Keenan years, or did you miss?
No, just after Keenan. I think 2 years after. So I missed him, and I missed Gretzky. Yes.
So you got Coach Q.
Yes, for 3 years. Yes.
So I've looked at Coach Q and I've watched his career, and I'm really a fan of his. And I think he does something that no other coach does. and I've seen this statement, and I'm really starting to fall more into it, that more coaches should be like chess players and poker players. And it really felt like Coach Q was a chess player out there. Is that how you guys felt, or do you see the same thing?
Yeah, he was very much ahead of his time in a lot of concepts. Back when teams would still pick up their defensemen, the forwards coming back would pick up the defensemen. He was already having us do a tracking concept similar to what the players do now. His ability to go ahead and let our defensemen, albeit you had Hall of Famers and Chris Pronger and Al McInnes, but to let your defensemen join the rush, headman the puck, leave the zone, be part of the offense in the offensive zone, all important aspects of revolutionizing the game, changing the way it was played so that you could be more effective offensively and keep puck possession, thus being better defensively. And just the way he treated everybody, he made the game fun. Practices were short. They were crisp and fast. It felt like you had to be flying 100 miles an hour in practice. And when you got into the game, things felt easier. These are all different from what I had with some of the other coaches where practices were slow and monotonous and the same boring drills every day. We had high competitive, a lot of 2-on-1s, a lot of 3-on-2s and 3-on-1s, and a lot of speed. And there was always coaches coming up behind you telling you to go faster, faster, faster. Well, when you did that and you did it in a game, the game became easier. And I think that's why we were able to be so effective, because that team was not only good, but we learned to push the pace, and we had a tremendous system.
Yeah. Now, then he goes to, I think he goes from, he leaves St. Louis, or he gets fired in St. Louis, which I thought was stupid. And he ends up in Chicago, and then he goes to Chicago, and what's he do? Brings them 3 cups.
Yes. Obviously you had some pretty good personnel there in Chicago to work with, but it's no surprise that he was able to do that because, he was definitely, like I said, revolutionary, and he continued to evolve. I mean, you're talking about somebody who still changed from the mid 90s into the 2013, 14, and here he is in 2020 still coaching. So from the mid 90s, 25 years later, he's still relevant in the National Hockey League because he understands that the game evolves, and he's going to continue to evolve as a system and play the game the way it needs to be played now with what the players have to offer as far as talent and skill. He's not playing a 1995 system with the Florida Panthers in 2020. He's playing with what he has now, and somebody that has that ability is going to be a good coach, and he was then, and he still is now.
Right. Was he one of the better coaches you played for?
Certainly, yes. I rate him up there with Jimmy Roberts, who, ironically never had a lot of success in the National Hockey League level because I don't think players bought into his concepts. But when Jimmy Roberts had us in 1991, he'd played for the old Montreal Canadiens back in the day. And his philosophy that he had with us in 1991 in the American Hockey League in Springfield, where we went from the team before the year in Binghamton, won 11 hockey games. It was the worst professional hockey season of 11 wins out of 80 games, the worst professional hockey season in national hockey or in professional hockey history. And the next year, 14 or 15 of those players went to Springfield. We had a few additions, and Jimmy Roberts was the biggest change. And he took us all back to first place, and we won the Calder Cup in 91. And his philosophy in 91 was years ahead of it. It was 10 years ahead of its time with what he was teaching us on the ice and how to play the game. And I looked at him as someone who saw the game in a completely different way. And there was no yelling. It was just him being positive, challenging the players, giving us the tools that we needed to be successful, and the players ran with it. And unfortunately, we had enough talent to get the job done. And it was all because he let us do what we needed to do to be successful, and kept us within a quality system that didn't have any handcuffs on anybody.
Yeah, I remember that. Hold on. Yeah. Yay me! Always happened. There we go. Okay. I think I'm back recording. There we go. So, yeah, I do remember how the game has changed a lot from, I started watching in the early to mid 70s, and as the game's evolved, I think right now the game is at a really good point with one exception. I'm really, for me, the neutral zone play of most teams just bogs me down. I don't think that most coaches and teams realize how important that area is. And I remember Coach Q used to really work you guys in the neutral zone. If I remember right, didn't he have one practice where you couldn't leave the neutral zone?
Yeah, we did. We had all kinds of drills. I mean, I can't even remember what they were. But back then, we were talking about the late '90s. The trap was still a relevant concept because the New Jersey Devils, Jacques Lemaire, had been that successful and won a couple cups with it. And we were, there was a lot of teams trying to emulate. Which every time somebody wins the cup, that's what they do. They try and copy what the championship team does. We were working a lot on the trap breaker, and that is essentially from just inside your own blue line to the other team's blue line, which is the whole neutral zone, as you said.
Yeah.
And you have to have good puck movers. You have to have guys that are smart. You have to have discipline, and you have to have some timing. So there was a lot of drills regarding the neutral zone that allowed us to move the puck up and through the neutral zone and get in and on the attack. So, it was a difficult time because the transition was happening, and once you got past that, then you dealt with some of the things the Detroit Red Wings were doing, which was the Russian influence, where they would actually come to the line and not even go in and turn back and then hit somebody that was coming late with speed. Well, now you've lost a gap as a defenseman or a forward that's trying to check them, and you got somebody going full speed, and unless you put your stick on them, they're near impossible to stop. So there was different concepts that have all been implemented into today's new game.
Well, I know you've been out of the game for a while, but you were I think you worked with the Blues as an analyst, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
What do you feel about today's game? What do you feel about today's Blues game?
Well, I think the Blues they set a new standard last year with the four lines, the constant pressure, the ability to forecheck and keep the other team off balance all night long. I love the way the game was played by the Blues last year. I mean, obviously, if you could watch that be played by four first lines, it would be really entertaining. But the Blues made it entertaining because all four lines were effective. You'd watch the third line, the fourth line go out and put all kinds of pressure on them. And if you notice, I look at this year's hockey and this year's regular season, and even more so in this playoffs, all the teams are doing it. Vancouver, unfortunately, beat us at our own game.
Yeah.
All these teams are playing that way. Vegas has played that way since they came to the National Hockey League. They're doing it. The Dallas Stars are now doing it. The Tampa Bay Lightning have now found a way to do it. The New York Islanders are certainly doing it. It's constant pressure all the time. And it's a feather in the cap of Craig Berube and the Blue staff because they're the ones that perfected it last year. They did it better than anybody, and they won the Stanley Cup because of it. Now they're being emulated, and now a whole bunch of teams are doing it. So what's the next phase going to be? Is there going to be a way to break that? I don't know. And you mentioned a little bit before, like the one thing you don't like is the neutral zone. The only thing I don't particularly like about the game right now is the puck off the glass and out. I mean, it's a play that's really we saw the Vegas Golden Knights lose to the Dallas Stars in the conference final with a puck that was knocked out of the zone and lose on a power play goal in overtime. Now, that one wasn't intentional. Very few of them are. But there's so many pucks that whenever the defensemen are in trouble are just flipped off the glass and out or shot off the glass and out, and then it's chased down in the neutral zone. The Pittsburgh Penguins did that very well in a couple of their cup runs with what you would call a mediocre defense, but a very good and quality fast forwards. And they would just put pucks in the neutral zone and chase them down. It worked very well. And now a lot of teams are doing it. I would just like to see the game go back to more plays being made, more passes being made, because to me, watching the puck get tic-tac-toed around, whether it be in the defensive zone or through the neutral zone, all the way to the offensive zone, which is what you probably have to do to create a quality scoring chance. I think that's more entertaining than watching the puck get flipped into the neutral zone and then just chased down, then banged in again, and then chipped out again. I don't know how you're going to change it because it's the safest and easiest way to get the puck out of the zone, and it seems to work. But until somebody finds a reason or a way to stop that, we're going to see more of it. But that's the one part of the game that probably frustrates me now.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And the other part of that is when they do it and it doesn't touch the glass, and all of a sudden it's a penalty when you're just trying to be safe. It's not really a delay of game, but
Right.
that's what they call it. Well, I've taken a lot of your time. Last question for you. Any, from your time in St. Louis and being there, any things stick out? What's your favorite memory of your time in St. Louis, playing or working for the team? What's something about being in St. Louis that you're never going to forget?
Well, I mean, I've been living there for 23 years now. The 3 years I played and 20 after, and obviously it's where my family and kids grew up. I mean, I love the town, and a couple of stories. I remember when Mark McGuire in 1998, I believe, was making the home run bid and ended up becoming the all-time single-season home run leader. I remember getting into the Cheesecake Factory with a bunch of guys after training camp, and he was in there eating by himself, sitting there eating by himself, and no one bothers him. Okay, that's the kind of respect that the St. Louis fans had for their athletes. They all knew who he was, of course, but nobody would bother him while he was having, a lunch by himself. We walked over, said hi because he'd been in our locker room many times, and he said hi, and then we let him sit and eat. When I would go to the counter and I would put my credit card down, people would look at me and go, "Oh, hi, nice to see you. Good luck tomorrow night." Not bother you, but be very respectful. There's a tremendous hockey fan base in St. Louis that knows exactly who you are, appreciates you, but is very respectful, but very appreciative of what you do on the ice. And I think that's what a lot of our alumni like about St. Louis. That's what I loved about it. And because of that, the years that we were there, those successful years where each year we were a top 4 team in the National Hockey League, the playoff runs where we had to face Detroit in the first round or the second round my first year, Dallas in the second round, and then in 99-2000, unfortunately losing out in that year as well in the first round. And then the next year to Colorado in, I think, conference finals. It was a tough run for the Blues with teams that they would hope could win a Stanley Cup, but the fans never gave up. They were still showing up in droves. And I think that's what really makes me appreciate St. Louis, the city, and the people that live there. And that's why I wanted to live there and I wanted to be part of the organization and stay a part of hockey and still love it there to this day.
Yeah, well, I've had some contact with Bruce, and hopefully when things get back, they're going to try and, I might get to meet some of you guys at an alumni event or something, do a show there. It would be a really thrill of mine. Just one last thing I want to tell you, give you an idea of what you guys mean to me. So you got to think back in the day, before the internet, before all of this, we used to get our news on the ship on little teletexts, the rolling papers. And during the Gulf War in late 90, early 91 is when Brett was on one of his goal scoring runs. I would read look for the scrolls and read, to see if he'd scored a goal or not. So that's what they meant to me. And then in late 97, 98, when I went from Chicago to Japan, to start to get the internet to where I could pay attention a lot more and know you guys, because there was a period where I didn't know who any of the players were. I mean, you guys could have walked right by me and I did not know you. But the team and you guys, you've always been my escape from the stresses of my real world, and it means so much to me that you guys are willing to come on and do the show, and I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Well, that's actually that's very kind. It's an honor to be able to think that we provided some entertainment to people for many years. And when you think about it, it's mind-boggling. It's really hard to fathom that millions of people watched it on TV and 20,000 every single night put out their hard-earned money to come and watch us play. And then to think that people like you, as far away as Japan, finding out what the score was on a ship on a ticker like that. I mean, it's quite touching actually to think that fans and people appreciated what we did and what our love and our passion for the game of hockey brought joy to other people as well, because selfishly we think sometimes it's all about us, but it's really nice to know that the fans appreciate it. And again, going back to what we think about St. Louis and the fans, they're the reason you play the game. And at some point, I still play the game when there's nobody in the stands to this day, and I still would have played I would have played in the bubble this year with nobody in the stands and still loved every minute of it. But at the end of the day, there's still millions of people watching that love it. And we appreciate the fact that you guys appreciate what we did.
Well, I thank you so much. Thank you for your time, Terry. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, thanking Terry Yake for being on the BlueNote Fan Report. And I got to tell you, Terry, I know for a fact I'm bleeding blue with you, my friend. Aloha,
All right.
mahalo, and I hope to talk to you again on the BlueNote Fan Report.
Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing interview with Terry Yake. Terry, thank you so much. I know we had a little trouble getting that scheduled. I'm glad we did. Great conversation, really great input. I love what he had to say about the Blues and the neutral zone and the dumping of the puck. Just really good information. Interviews are getting better. I think I'm getting a little better. Now, something that you haven't seen in a while is fan of the game. Or not just fan of the game, about the fan. Well, because the playoffs have kind of gone, it's getting harder. But I spend my time in the groups, believe it or not. And I saw this post, and I think it was St. Louis Blues Nation. It was either Lounge or Nation, one of the two, by Phillip Leeker. Phillip got married with a Blues-themed wedding. So I reached out to him, and he sent me a story that was wow. So here it goes. Last year, during the playoffs, he'd been with his fiance or his girlfriend, Stephanie, for 8 years. 8 years together. During the Schwartz hat trick game, he announces to Stephanie and the rest of their family that if the Blues win the cup, he would propose at the parade. Well, no plan B, just letting things go. The Blues go on to win the cup, and what happens is phone blows up. They win it on a Wednesday, the parade's on a Saturday. That means Thursday, Friday to get a ring. No ring. So they got to go around. He finally gets one. They go downtown. They're celebrating with all the fans. And what's he do? He gets down on one knee, says, "Stephanie, will you marry me?" She looks at him and says, "No way." No, she said yes. Of course she said yes. And they planned their wedding, and a global pandemic hit. But on Saturday, the September 12th, they were able to finally have their wedding in St. Louis, and it was a hit. Blues-themed wedding. Blue and gold lighting, Blues-inspired cake. The bridesmaid wore blue dresses. The groomsmen wore Blues ties. They even got a hold of a gentleman named Jason Schwartz. Yes, that's his name. And his Stan Ripley cup. Here's this card here. I got to get him on the show. He has an actual replica of the Stanley Cup that he made, that he took to their reception. Big hit. They played Gloria. It was just an amazing time. As you can see from the pictures, I'm really happy for both of them. And when I reached out to him, he jumped at the chance to be on the show. I know him and Stephanie are on their honeymoon right now. They're waiting for the show to come out. Apologize, it took me a little bit, guys, but I hope you enjoy this, and I hope all your family watches it. Phillip and Stephanie Leeker, you guys let loose, and I want to say thank you for being my fans of the game. Mahalo and aloha on your wedding. Congratulations, my friends. Okay, guys, things are moving along. The interviews are coming out great. I'm getting good response. I'm getting good interviews. Please keep your things coming. Please subscribe to this page, and don't forget about the contest, the Pick'em contest. Get on there. Everyone's got a chance. Everyone's still out there and has a chance to win that signed Huso jersey. So I hope you I hope you enjoy my sneeze, and that you'll follow my show, like it, subscribe, all that fun stuff, because you know who this is. This is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan. And you know what I'm doing. I am bleeding blue with you. Aloha, mahalo, and I'll see you on the next Blue Note Fan Report. Aloha.